the headline news for the last many weeks has been the fiscal cliff. And speaking to the president 6 months before the election, a few weeks before the election, a few days before the election, and immediately after the election, he indicated that we needed to get our financial house in order and that his goal was to do just that. But to do that, because of past experiences, he laid out what he wanted, and that's very simple. The rates for those who have been blessed with economic security in this country will have to pay a little bit more. And those middle-class Americans will also have the same tax structure they had for the last many years. He will not raise taxes on the middle class, and those people who have done well will have to pay a little bit more. The American people think this is the way it should be. Now, Madam President, just a little bit of history. I've said this before, but I'll go into a little more detail today. When I first became the leader, I took a trip with a number of senators to South America, countries that we American senators had never been to, like Bolivia. It was a wonderful trip. It was great for our country, and it was good for the senators to learn more about that most important part of the world for America. I was very fixed on who I wanted to go on that trip with me. But the two I asked to go was Judd Gregg, New Hampshire, who had been chairman of the Budget Committee, and Kent Conrad, who was the chairman of the Budget Committee at the time. Those two fine senators spent about 18 hours seated side by side, both having tablets to write on, and they were working on the number one issue that they thought was important for this country, what we do about the future of our country economically. And they came up with an idea that was very, very good. It had worked before on closing military bases. Madam President, we had military bases that we'd been trying to close since World War I. We couldn't do it. We didn't have the political will to do it. So we had a base closing commission. And with the base closing commission, what we did is said, okay, we're going to have a commission. We'll work on this. They will report back to us, and there will be no filibusters, no amendments, up or down vote. We did that. We had 2 rounds of those. We closed scores of bases, saved the country hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's what Judd Gregg and Kent Conrad patterned their legislation. And that would be, there will be a commission appointed. They will report back to us, no amendments, no filibusters. I thought it was a novel, great idea. Legislation was drafted. I brought it to the Senate floor. 7 Republicans who co-sponsored the legislation wouldn't vote for it. We couldn't get 60 votes to bring it to the floor. So a number of us asked President Obama if he would do a commission, and he did. It's the Bowles-Simpson Commission. Now, Madam President, the Bowles-Simpson Commission didn't have the potential that the Judd Gregg, Kent Conrad work had, because they could send us something here and we could amend it, we could filibuster it. But we didn't have to worry about that because they couldn't get enough votes from the commissioners to do that. So that was a failure. Then President Obama entered into negotiations with the Speaker. And they had talks that went on for weeks. They failed. And then they had another round of talks. That failed. Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, met with the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Republican Eric Cantor. Cantor walked out of those meetings. After all that, there was an agreement made here that we would have a super committee. It would work under the same terms and conditions as the program that Judd Gregg and Kent Conrad came up with. The super committee, 3 appointed by me, Senator McConnell, the Speaker, and Leader Pelosi. 12. They would work, bring it to the floor, no amendments, no filibusters. About a week before they were ready, they had to report by statute, I got a letter signed by virtually every Republican senator, no revenue. So, Madam President, the President's not going to fall for that again, because every time we've done this, and I went over what has happened, and we can add to that the Gang of Six, the Gang of Eight, well-intentioned senators, never could they agree on revenue. So the President's not going to fall for that again. He's not going to do that again. It is, Mr. President, it's like, here we go. We're going to have a card game. You show us all your cards, and then we'll show you ours. Nope. Comes time to show them the cards of the person you're playing against. Nope. It's like the Charlie Brown cartoon. How many times is Charlie Brown going to try to kick that football? Because we know every time he approaches that football, it'll be taken away from him. He can't do it. And that's what's happened. And we are not going to fall for that again. The American people aren't going to be under the illusion that the Republicans are sometime in the future going to come up with revenue. They're going to come up with raising the rates, or, Madam President, we are going over the cliff. How many times do we have to go through this drill to know that it's an unfair game? So President Obama is not going to fall for that again. He's been very, very clear. I would hope that, I heard on the news this morning an interview done by Leader Pelosi. She said she has hopes that Speaker Boehner will come around. Well, I hope that, in fact, is the case. But to this point, there hasn't been a lot of progress, and I'm very, very disappointed.